child must die tonight. Adeze, step aside. The elders have spoken.
You will not take my Obinna.
We have our orders.
Then you will have to go through me.
The boy the village tried to kill. On the night the boy was born, the sky above the village turned red. Lightning tore through the clouds, the wind howled like an angry spirit, and every dog in the village began barking at once. Inside a small clay hut at the edge of the village, a woman screamed in pain as she gave birth. But when the baby finally cried, something terrifying happened. The midwife dropped the child, because burned into the baby's chest was a strange black mark. A mark the villagers believed meant only one thing: death. And before the sun rose the next morning, the entire village had already decided the child must die. The village of Igbara had lived in peace for generations. It was a quiet place, surrounded by thick forests and fertile land. The people farmed, hunted, and lived by ancient traditions passed down from their ancestors. But those traditions also carried old fears, and one of the oldest fears was the mark of the destroyer. According to legend, once every 100 years, a child would be born with a dark mark shaped like a twisted spiral. The elders believed that child would one day bring destruction to the entire village. No crops, no rain, no life. And the only way to stop the prophecy was to kill the child before he grew up. For generations, the mark had never appeared again until that stormy night. The baby's mother, Adeze, held her newborn tightly. Tears ran down her face as the midwife stared in horror. The mark was clear, a dark spiral stretching across the boy's chest like burned charcoal. The midwife whispered in fear, "This child will destroy us." Word spread faster than fire in dry grass. Within an hour, the village square was full. Torches lit the darkness as the elders gathered. At the center stood Chief Nadozi, the oldest man in the village. He listened as the midwife explained what she had seen: the mark, the storm, the strange cries in the forest. Everything matched the ancient prophecy. The chief closed his eyes heavily. "The spirits have spoken," he said slowly. "The boy cannot live." Gasps filled the crowd, but inside her hut, Adeze refused to accept it. She held her baby tighter and whispered softly, "My son, no one will hurt you." She named him Obinna, which meant father's heart. But outside, the villagers were already sharpening their spears. Before dawn, 4 men approached Adaze's hut. They were the strongest hunters in the village. Their orders were simple: take the child, end the prophecy. But when they opened the door, Adeze was waiting. She stood between them and the baby. "You will not touch him," she said. One of the hunters sighed. "Adeze, we must protect the village." She shook her head. "He is just a child." The hunters hesitated. Even the hardest men felt something break inside them. But fear was stronger than mercy. One of them stepped forward. "Forgive us." Before he could reach the baby, a sudden thunderclap exploded above the hut. The men froze. The wind burst through the door, blowing out their torches. And in that moment of darkness, Adeze ran. She grabbed the baby and disappeared into the forest. For years, Adeze lived deep in the forest with Obinna. She built a small hut far from the village paths. Obinna grew up surrounded by trees, rivers, and animals. He learned how to fish, how to climb, how to survive. But there was one thing Adeze never told him: the truth about the mark. To him, the spiral on his chest was just a strange birthmark. But sometimes strange things happened around him. Animals never feared him. Snakes moved away when he walked. Birds followed him through the forest. And once, when he cried during a drought, Rain began falling minutes later. Adaze noticed these things, and deep inside, she feared the prophecy might be real. When Obinna turned 16, something unexpected happened. A group of hunters from Igbara entered the forest. They had been tracking a wounded antelope. Instead, they found Obinna. The hunters froze when they saw the spiral mark on his chest. One of them whispered in terror, "The prophecy." They ran back to the village immediately. And that same night, the elders gathered again. Chief Nadozi's voice trembled. "The boy lives." Fear spread through the village like poison. For years, they believed the danger had passed. But now, the destroyer had returned. And this time, they would not let him escape. At sunrise, nearly 20 men marched into the forest. Spears, knives, torches. Their mission was clear: kill the boy. Meanwhile, Obinna felt something strange, a heavy feeling in his chest. The forest was silent. Even the birds had stopped singing. Then he heard footsteps, dozens of them. His mother rushed out of the hut, her face pale with fear. "They found us." Obinna looked confused. "Who?" Adaze finally told him everything. The prophecy, the mark, the village, the death sentence placed on him since birth. Obinna stood silently. Then he said something unexpected. "I will not run." Adaze grabbed his arm. "They will kill you." But Obinna shook his head. "If they fear me, I must show them who I really am." When the hunters reached the clearing, they found Obinna waiting, alone, unarmed. The leader raised his spear. "You should have stayed hidden, boy." Obinna spoke calmly. "I am not your enemy." But the hunters remembered the prophecy, and fear turned their hearts to stone. The first spear flew through the air, but before it reached Obinna, a powerful wind burst through the forest. The spear was thrown off course and landed harmlessly in the dirt. The men froze. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. Obinna looked around confused. He had not meant to do anything, but something inside him had responded. The hunters stepped back in fear. One whispered, "He really is the destroyer." At that moment, an old voice echoed from the trees, "Stop this madness." The hunters turned. An ancient woman slowly stepped into the clearing. She was known as Mama Ifunanya, the oldest spiritual healer in the region. Even the chief respected her. She walked toward Obinna and looked carefully at the spiral mark. Then she sighed. "You fools." The hunters looked confused. "This is not the mark of destruction. It is the mark of the protector." She explained the truth. The ancient prophecy had been misunderstood for generations. The spiral symbol did not mean the boy would destroy the village. It meant he would appear when the village was in danger, and his power would save them. But fear had twisted the story, turning a protector into a monster. The hunters looked at Obinna in shock. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the forest. The ground shook violently. Birds burst into the sky. Mama Ifunanya's eyes widened. It has begun. From deep in the forest, a massive landslide started moving toward the village. Heavy rains from the mountains had weakened the soil. If the landslide reached Igbara, the entire village would be buried. Mama Ifunanya pointed at Obinna. "You are the only one who can stop it." Obinna ran toward the mountains. Behind him, the hunters followed. Soon they saw it, a massive wall of mud, rocks and trees crashing down toward the village. The ground shook violently. Villagers screamed in panic. Obinna closed his eyes. He focused on the strange energy inside him. The spiral mark on his chest began to glow faintly. Then, suddenly, the earth trembled. Large rocks shifted. The falling landslide split apart, crashing safely into empty forest on both sides of the village. The destruction stopped just before reaching the first huts. Silence filled the air. Obinna collapsed to his knees, exhausted but alive. Hours later, the villagers gathered in the square. Chief Nadozi slowly walked toward Obinna. For years they had feared him, hunted him, tried to kill him, and yet he had just saved them all. The old chief bowed his head. We were wrong. The villagers followed, one by one. Obinna looked around at the people who once wanted him dead. Then he helped the chief stand. We cannot change the past, he said, but we can change the future. From that day forward, the spiral mark was no longer feared. Instead, it became a symbol of protection. And the boy the village once tried to kill became the guardian of Igbara.